Today I'm so excited to be building my first city build in Dreamlight Valley, if you can believe it. I'm going to be using a lot of the items from the Pop City Star Path, as well as trying to find a place for Ralph's house. It was quite the undertaking, but I think I am really satisfied with the result. We're not going to talk about the fact that it is putting me at about 2,500 items, and this is the only biome in Wish Blossom Ranch that I have decorated. It is in the Modish Marsh part of Glamour Gulch, which was a much larger space than I think I was realizing. So to fill that with a full city was a lot of items required, but I am very happy with the result, and hopefully I can figure out a way to decorate the rest of my biomes without having to disturb this build too much. But without further ado, let's get into the build. The main buildings I wanted from the start to include in this build were Tiana's Palace, the Haunted Mansion, Ralph's house, and the Monsters Inc. home for Sully and Mike, as well as obviously the San Francisco Bridge. The way I decided to tackle that was to build the bridge kind of in the center of the biome and have it be going across a large body of water. This section of the build took up quite a lot of space, which was good for how big the area is, but also it took a while to build just simply because these water pieces are not super easy to work with. They're also like, you can't really do it on an angle, so it's very squared off. So I think it kind of worked though with this build simply because it's kind of Wreck-It Ralph and Pop City, so like the pixel aspect kind of works with this build. So I wasn't too upset about the squaredness of everything. And I'm just kind of going in and building some islands in the middle before I fill out the rest of the water so that it's not just one big body of water. These water pieces are surprisingly expensive. I bankrupted myself twice doing this section of the build, just on this section of the build, to the point where I didn't even have pumpkins left to harvest, so I was waiting on them to grow, so I literally was scrounging for gold to get enough star coins to build this, and I haven't run out of star coins in a really long time. It was quite stressful. But group mode and presets definitely came in handy for this build because I was having to use them a lot as well as move around large portions of the build a lot just to make things fit on the grid. So group mode was definitely a lifesaver in that regard. And I chose to do this in the Modish Marsh because for the obvious reason of Ralph's main color is red and the grass here is red. But it also felt like it fit well with the vibe of the marsh because it comes with a lot of those Victorian buildings. And the city, as you see it come together, is kind of like it took the concept of San Francisco, which is like a combo of Tokyo and San Francisco, and added more cities into that mix, like European cities and New Orleans. So it took a lot of inspirations. Each street is a different vibe, which is kind of, I feel like, really works. With one, it makes sense for a city because a city is going to be a melting pot. There's going to be a lot of different cultures within that city. So it's really free to do a lot of different things in this build. It does rain a lot in Glamour Gulch. I don't know if it's specific to Glamour Gulch or if the game just rains a lot more often, but it was raining on me a lot during these builds. And it's also just very foggy here by default. Also, if you've ever seen Legend of Korra, I also took some inspirations from Republic City. I really didn't have a plan going into the shape of this waterway. I just kind of started building and went with my gut for most of this. Ah, finally, it stopped raining. I also tried to avoid using any of the edge pieces that had greenery on them just because the foliage here is not green. So I felt like it would stand out too much. I also thought I would add Remy's house into this build because I have him in my plaza currently, obviously, because that's where the restaurant is, but his house is never one that gets the same skins that all the other buildings from the plaza do, so I am hesitant to have him there anymore if I ever want to like change my plaza for like a holiday. So I figured it'd be easier to just move his house here, but that did unfortunately mean that I felt like I didn't have enough space on that side for all these buildings, so I am shifting the entire lake down to give some more space on that side of the build. Thank God for group mode. this footprint on Ralph's house and the footprint of a lot of the buildings that they've been coming out with lately is not good. The beekeeper house was really, really bad. Ralph's house is really, really bad because you see how this it's on a slant. The furthest point out on that slant is where the footprint is. So like you can't put anything underneath that slant, which is really unfortunate because that means there's a huge gap of where you can put stuff for his house. It also means you can't really put anything flush up against it to like make it fit into a city block. I also wanted to use Steamboat Willie, and the only tile that fits on is the largest piece of water, so I did have to tear up a bunch of things to get that to fit in the build. But I knew I definitely wanted it because I haven't used it anywhere else, and I doubt I will, so I wanted to include it in this build. And obviously this build took place over a long set of days, so I do eventually add in the elemental boats that we got as well. I didn't have them at the beginning of the build, but they came out while I was building it. I'm kind of building out the city block. I feel like this is like the old quarter of the city. I used a lot of these like old brick buildings. I tried to use Oswald in this build, but spoiler, he does not end up in the build at all. I just couldn't really fit him in easily. So I'm kind of just playing with layout and seeing how I want the city to be. I kind of leaned into like when you have these really old cities that have so much existing architecture already there, city planning is pretty difficult and there's a lot of things that potentially don't make a lot of sense layout wise. So I definitely gave myself permission to not have everything be super procedural, super on the grid, super rigid, but it's much more rigid than any of my other builds have ever been. And I kind of used the Cruella buildings just to kind of fill space in certain places where it was needed. These city buildings that they gave us though, like unfortunately don't fit together super well either. Like the new ones do, like these ones that I just used from the Star Path, they fit together really well. But like the older, like the bookshops, the toy store, the cafes, they don't really fit flush with each other. And it can make them like specifically the bookstore because it has books all the way around it and those books expand its footprint more. It makes it a little difficult to fit in, but the new Main Street buildings fit together really well, so that's why I have them kind of in a block right here, and I'm kind of just messing around with orientation of it to get the best look. I love this new bus stop piece. I use it multiple times throughout the build. And I decided since the bookshop doesn't really fit together with other things very well that I would give it a courtyard of its own, reward it for being problematic. Although I do end up making this bookshop my player house in Wish Blossom Ranch. Guess it worked out that I gave it its own yard. And then I love this. This is like one of the only Zootopia buildings we have in the game, so I definitely wanted to include that in the build as well. And then I have this little bump out area that goes through quite a few expansions of size, just because it's currently not big enough to house anything. And I don't like when the pathing gets covered by the water, because then you get this hard edge. It kind of defeats the purpose of the water. But I'm using this brick pathing for the sidewalks of the build, and that also became a problem later on because there was a day where I ended up using all 1,000 items from the Scrooge store because of this path. So I wouldn't recommend using it for large builds. I'm going in with the slate path, which is actually native to Clamor Gulch. You have to use the beaded soil to make it. And I did have to farm a lot of that soil to make this. The same thing with that black chain fence. It uses the beaded soil as well as the hangers. So there's a lot of resource gathering within Glamour Gulch. And then I wanted to make like a crosswalk situation. I experimented with these rugs, didn't really love it, experimented with a couple pathings, eventually ended up just going with the sidewalk pathing built in, just because it tied in with the sidewalks, and I feel like it works pretty well because it's a hard edge square rather than a rounded one. I wish we had more hard edge squares in the game because I feel like they would fit together much better. And this is kind of where I ran out of the sidewalk, and I was using the non-bordered version just to fill it for now while I plot out where that's going to go, and then I swap it over later to the regular bordered one. This building became rather difficult to work around because I tried putting the road on an angle, but the way that the pathing fits together with other pathings on an angle leaves this huge gap. And I don't understand why, but it does, and I could not let that stand. I tried a couple different ways of fixing it, but I ended up just making it squared off and having the road be coming right up to the stairs. And then I used this rug, the piglet rug, that is the only rug that I could find that actually goes on top of the path rather than being underneath the border of the path. So that helped with kind of hiding the fact that this hotel was letting out right onto the street, which is what I plan on doing with that building in my head, is it's a hotel. It looks like one to me. Now I'm working on Tiana's section. I put in her streetcar, and then I'll make this a little seating patio for her restaurant. I tried to make this little area kind of a slice of New Orleans. Give me fond memories. Decorating the front of buildings is one of my favorite things to do in this game. Like, I don't like to just have a building placed with nothing to tie it in. So I almost always have like a little entrance, something in front of it just to make it feel like it's part of the build rather than just a thing that got placed. Adding in some more crosswalks and then having a little courtyard, which I decided was for parking for the hotel. I ended up putting Oswald's car there and the little podium to be kind of like a valet stand. And I needed to make a little driveway up to it, and all of Cruella's luggage outside the hotel. I decided that the hotel is actually where, like, in the lore of my valley, is where the government of Wish Blossom meets. The government being Cruella, Tinkerbell, and Snow White, and me to keep the peace. We all have a voice in Wish Blossom, but I definitely wanted to oversee things given how badly things went in my absence. So that hotel is kind of in my head where we all end up meeting, and I do kind of build an homage to that later, which you will see. And then this is where I expand this island a bit to fit the lighthouse on it, which took quite a bit of expanding. But don't get attached to the lighthouse because it does not end up staying here. This is actually where the well ends up going for this biome. It was a cute little thing, but it just didn't, I felt like it didn't fit. Like it would work better in an ocean, like coastal build, not on a lake. And then there's this cute little elephant table that I feel like goes really well with this restaurant, so I used that table, and it came with these chairs. So I put those in as well, and then the little symbol lamps are just really cute. So now I am working on the second block of the city, In this area of the build, I definitely wanted to use a lot of the Turning Red and Mulan and Big Hero 6 items. We don't have a lot of Japan items other than the Big Hero 6 ones, so it's kind of a mix of the two sets. Originally those plants were only going to be in front of the building, but I felt like they looked better wrapped all the way around. I wanted to include a lot of crafting tables in this build, so I added one next to this building as well as over in the courtyard of the bookstore. This section was actually a pretty big struggle because it wasn't a lot of space left to have both a street, a sidewalk, and buildings. So it goes through a lot of different iterations until I end up with one that I liked. I ran out of the black fencing, so I am putting in placeholder fencing. This picket fence does not stick around. Same thing with this road. Didn't want to waste time going to collect resources. I did end up deciding to make this a little sushi restaurant area. I love this item and the like benches that come with it. I decided since I couldn't have buildings around the edge of this part of the build that I would put in this fencing with the hedges, and then these sycamore trees from Earth Day are so good for like hiding stuff because they have a small footprint but they cover a lot of space. So if you still want these, I believe the code is still active and you can get them with this code. Then I decided that the road didn't need to go around this part of the build. This is all kind of like, I mean, when you go to Japan, there's a lot of places where you can't drive, it's all walking. So I figured this section is like that, where you would just park and walk, or obviously take the train. And then I have a little seating area outside for the sushi restaurant. It's little details like this that eat up my item limit, but it's worth it, I feel like. Now I'm making a little seating area for Mulan's tea stall. I always like to put a little seating area around her stall, just because like it's not the most useful stall, so I just try to make it part of the decor. This is meant to be kind of like a little boardwalk food area, food/tea. This is where the lighthouse leaves us, and I have to expand this again to make room for the well. Now I'm gonna work on the path to, I wanted to have roads on both sides of the waterway as well to get to the other side, because I didn't want the bridge to be the only way, especially if Goofy decides to come down the bridge at the same time you're trying to go down the bridge and now you can't pass because he's so massive. That is my least favorite part of this expansion, was Goofy's freaking stall. I would have preferred having actual stalls because you can decorate them and make them blend into the builds. Don't know what the thought process was there. But like, it actively makes me not spend time in Wish Blossom Ranch because of that freaking stall, because it's just always in the way. It's worse than Maui. Building out the outside of the bookstore, and this little decor is what made me end up wanting to live here because I felt like it turned out really cute. I'm making the little patio with the new Wreck-It Ralph chairs and a little rug to make this a nice cozy area. I forgot about the clock crafting table, so I added that in front of the clock store to add another crafting table into the build. And then seating in front of the confectionery, really bright and colorful. Add some cupcakes. Then I discovered you can put seating on the ledges of these buildings, so I did that, and then I decorated the outside of that house, which we will come back to later. It's a little Easter egg. This is where I am putting in the little nod to the government. A little stone for each person. I am obviously the citrine, Snow White is the topaz, Cruella is the ruby, and Tinkerbell is the peridot. And now we are finally working on the other bank of the lake. I wanted this Fix-It Felix ride in here, so I'm kind of carving out a space for it in the water. And then Ralph's house, which I decided to pair with Remy's house. And then in this little back section that's like separate from the build, but technically it's still part of this biome, I decided to make that a movie theater. You kind of have to use your imagination because it's designed like it's an interior movie theater, not a drive-in. So we are going to pretend that this is a building. And it might not be super noticeable, but I did leave all of the nodes accessible in this build. The one over behind Tiana's you get to through that arch that I put back there, which is why I put that arch back there. Then I'm giving Ralph a little patio, wanted his brick bed in the build, so I felt like it needed to go in his little yard. And then there's the brick oven that goes perfectly with him. I believe I used all of the new items that came with Wreck-It Ralph, as well as all the items in the game for Turning Red and Big Hero 6. Here's hoping we get more Big Hero 6 items, / Baymax when. Putting some Ratatouille stuff out in front of Remy's house. I love these little flower boxes. Scattering some bricks around Ralph's, because of course he'd have bricks everywhere. And some stuff for our doggy friend, as well as a dog park. Never been able to use this item, so I definitely wanted to work it in. And then I have Mochi's house in this section of the build as well. Putting out some food. It's meant to be milk and cat food, but it's actually porridge and oatmeal. expanding this yet again because I wanted some like seating around the well. I didn't love how you couldn't access all sides of it, because you know how villagers just love to spawn behind it. And I wanted an arcade for the movie theater, so I have that back there. And then bus stop, which I put some Monsters Inc. items around because it's right next to their house. Then I'm giving them a little patio as well. I like to give people little patios or yards where I can. And then their footprint of their house is atrocious as well. Like that's as close as those flowers can get to the building, which is crazy. And then this is the entrance to the movie theater. You walk past the booth, and then you walk past those are the Timon Timon Talk signs. I just haven't purchased them yet. Kind of like the thing that shows you what movies are playing. Then I put this pathing in because it reminded me of that like retro carpet that a lot of older movie theaters had. I do end up switching it for a different version, but they both give the same vibe. And this is a little land cafe, which is why you need to pretend this is inside, because I definitely would not be outside. But I wanted to use the Big Hero 6 desks and chairs, so that's why I have that in there. And then just building out the arcade section. I didn't have enough of these black and white tiles because they required flowers from the Gulch, and I never get those because I hate them. Adding in some popcorn and drinks, and then the seating area for the snack bar. And then this section of the build is the little Easter egg I was talking about. I already had this chair set up preset. I wanted to have a little Badanon meeting. I originally was going to put this outside somewhere, but I just didn't have space for it. So I ended up building it inside of that house. And it does have one chair per every villain in the game currently, including the Forgotten. And I plan on keeping that updated as we get new villains in the game. That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it if you enjoyed this video to like and subscribe. This took so much longer than a lot of my other builds do because of how much I had to go into it, but I really wanted to do my first city build justice, and I really think that I did that. I hope everyone is looking forward to D23 this week. Hopefully we'll get some more information about the new expansion, but we never know. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you next time.